Let me ask you something. Have you ever been out on the water marking tons of fish on your electronics, only to drop a jig down and get absolutely nothing? You see them come up to look, then turn away. It's one of the most frustrating things in fishing. You've probably been told to give it more action, to make it dance. Well, I'm here to tell you that might be the worst advice you've ever received. The brutal truth is that your jigging technique, the very one you've been perfecting for years, is likely what's scaring the fish away. It looks fake, it feels wrong, and it screams danger. In this video, we're going to expose why your jigging seems completely unnatural to the fish you're trying to catch. And I promise you, by the end of this, you'll understand the one simple change that can double your bites. So, let me know in the comments right now, what's your go-to jigging motion? Be honest. Is it a sharp, rhythmic pop? Let's see how many of us have been making the same mistake. For generations, the conventional wisdom in jig fishing has been centered on action. We see it in old fishing shows. We hear it from the old-timers at the bait shop. You've got to keep that lure moving. The idea is that movement attracts attention, and to a certain extent that's true, but we've taken that idea and pushed it to an illogical extreme, and we've become obsessed with creating as much movement as possible, believing that a more active lure is a more effective lure. This has led to a style of jigging that is aggressive, mechanical, and most importantly, predictable. We do it because it feels like we are actively fishing, like we are in control. It's hard to just sit there and do nothing, right? It feels unproductive. This ingrained habit, this need to constantly do something with the rod tip, has become the standard. But it's a standard that completely ignores how real prey behaves and how a predator fish actually decides to strike. Let's start with the biggest offender, the myth of constant motion. Picture the average angler jigging. What do you see? It's often a constant, rhythmic up and down movement. Pop, drop, over and over again. It's a cadence you could set a metronome to. We think this constant fluttering and dancing is enticing, that it's screaming easy meal to a nearby fish. But I want you to think about what that looks like from the fish's perspective. Nothing in nature moves like that. A wounded bait fish doesn't perform a perfectly timed vertical dance. An insect larva or a crawfish doesn't twitch on a perfect 1-second interval. This constant artificial motion is the equivalent of a neon sign flashing warning, fake. The first thing a wary predator notices is something that doesn't belong, and a lure that never ever stops moving is a dead giveaway. It's not a sign of life, it's a sign of a puppet on a string. An older, smarter fish have learned to ignore it, or worse, be spooked by it. Now, let's build on that. The second major flaw is what I call the predictable cadence of failure. It's not just that the jig is always moving, but that it's moving in the exact same way every single time. Think about it. You find a rhythm that feels good to you. Maybe it's a double pop, then a 3-second pause. And you repeat that exact sequence for the next 10 minutes. A fish will see or feel that lure coming from a distance. At first, it might be curious, but after observing that pattern repeat itself 5, 6, 10 times, its brain registers it as unnatural. Real living creatures are erratic. They are unpredictable. A minnow might dart, then freeze for a long time, then twitch subtly, then glide. A crawfish might scoot, then stop, then slowly raise a claw. Your predictable, man-made rhythm has no element of surprise. It has no realism. You are essentially teaching the fish that you are not real before it even gets close enough to make a final decision. You've telegraphed your entire playbook, and the fish has already figured you out. Here's a better way to think about your role. You are a conductor of an orchestra, not a drummer in a rock band. A drummer often provides a steady, driving beat. That's the rhythmic jigging we just talked about. It's loud, it's noticeable, but it's monotonous. A conductor, on the other hand, guides the music with nuance. There are crescendos and decrescendos, moments of frantic energy followed by complete, deafening silence. The silence, the pause, is just as important as the noise. This is how you should approach your jig. Your job is not to beat a drum with your rod tip. Your job is to conduct your lure to tell a convincing story. The story of a dying shad, a distracted perch, or a vulnerable crawfish. This requires variation in your movements. It demands sharp snaps followed by long, agonizing pauses. It calls for tiny, almost imperceptible twitches of the rod tip, and then periods where you do absolutely nothing at all. You are creating a performance, and the most dramatic performances are the ones with the most dynamic range, not the ones that are loud all the time. Let's talk about the specific movements themselves. The two most common and destructive are the overly aggressive snap and the rip. Anglers often believe a hard, upward snap of the rod makes the jig jump and attract attention from far away. And while it does create a big movement, it's often a violent, unnatural one. Imagine a small baitfish. It doesn't rocket 6 feet toward the surface and then plummet back to the bottom. This massive vertical yo-yo effect is incredibly intimidating to a fish. It's not the motion of prey, it's the motion of something strange and potentially dangerous. The same goes for a hard, horizontal rip. It creates a huge pressure wave and a flash of movement, which might work for a pure reaction strike from a very aggressive fish, but for a neutral or negative fish, it's a panic button. It's like a person suddenly screaming and flailing their arms in a quiet library. You're not inviting them over for a conversation, you're making them want to run away. These movements lack the subtlety of real prey. One of the most overlooked aspects of bad jigging is ignoring what the fishing line is telling you. Many anglers are disconnected from their lure. They pop the rod tip up and then immediately follow the lure back down with a tight line. They are so focused on feeling that thump of a bite that they never let the lure behave naturally. When you keep a tight line on the fall, you are essentially guiding the jig down like a pendulum. It doesn't flutter, it doesn't spiral, it doesn't tumble, it just swings back down unnaturally. A real dying baitfish has a very specific, erratic, and often slow fall. To achieve this, you need to learn to incorporate slack in your presentation. After you lift the jig, you should lower your rod tip at a slightly faster rate than the jig is falling, creating a small, controlled bow of slack line. This frees the jig to do what it was designed to do, to flutter, glide, and look alive on its own. Most bites happen on the fall, and if your fall is unnatural, you're killing your chances before the fish even commits. To really understand why this all matters, we have to try and enter the fish's world. It's a completely different reality down there. We, as humans, are primarily visual creatures who live in the air. A fish lives in a dense, fluid medium where sound and vibration travel much more effectively than light. Their entire world is built around sensing subtle changes in pressure and movement. They don't just see your lure, they feel it long before it comes into view. When you are up on the surface or in a boat or on the ice making these sharp, repetitive movements, you're not just moving a small piece of lead and plastic. You are sending out powerful, rhythmic shock waves through the water. You are creating a distinct, artificial sound signature. It's a foreign, mechanical vibration in a world of subtle, organic pulses. It's the difference between hearing the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind and hearing a car alarm go off. One is part of the natural background, the other is a blaring signal that something is wrong. Let's talk more specifically about how they feel you. Every fish has a lateral line. This is a system of sense organs that runs down the side of their body, allowing them to detect movement, vibration, and pressure gradients in the water. It's like a full-body sonar system. They can use it to feel a struggling baitfish from yards away. They can feel the subtle push of water from a predator sneaking up on them. This system is incredibly sensitive. Now think about your jigging. A hard, repetitive snap creates a sharp, powerful pressure wave, a thump in the water that is anything but subtle. It's not the frantic, high-frequency vibration of a small, panicked minnow. It's a low-frequency, powerful pulse that might even mimic a much larger, more threatening creature. You think you're imitating a snack, but to the fish's lateral line, you might be sending the signal of a competitor or a threat. The fish feels this unnatural thump, 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 and its self-preservation instinct kicks in, telling it to stay away from the source of that strange mechanical disturbance. So, how does real prey actually behave? Spend some time watching an aquarium or underwater footage. You'll notice a common theme: conservation of energy and erratic movement. A healthy school of minnows might move together fluidly, but a sick or injured one will act differently. It might twitch, then fall, then lie motionless for a long period, then give another weak flutter. It's not a constant dance. A crawfish will crawl slowly along the bottom, stop completely, and then, if threatened, will scoot backward in a quick burst before settling down again and becoming motionless. A nymph or larva will make tiny, almost invisible movements. The key takeaway here is that periods of inactivity are just as common, if not more common, than periods of activity. The natural world is full of pauses. Animals pause to rest, to observe, to hide. Your lure needs to do the same. If your jig is in constant motion, it's not behaving like anything a fish is conditioned to eat. It's behaving like a toy, and fish don't eat toys. Think of it as the predator-prey dance. In nature, this is a complex and nuanced interaction. A predator often stalks its prey, observing it for a while before committing to an attack. They are looking for signs of weakness, vulnerability, and opportunity. Your jig is supposed to be playing the role of the vulnerable prey. But when you jig it with a powerful, confident, and rhythmic motion, you're not playing that role correctly. You're like a bad actor who has forgotten his lines. Your jig is not conveying vulnerability. Instead, its confident, repetitive movements might signal alertness, health, or even aggression. It's a bad dancer, completely out of sync with the natural rhythm of the underwater world. A predator fish sees this and becomes suspicious. Why is this little thing so brazen? Why is it moving in such a strange, mechanical way? The dance is wrong, the signals are crossed, and the predator decides to pass on the opportunity because something just doesn't feel right. This is the moment where curiosity turns to fear. A fish's life is a constant balance between finding food and avoiding becoming food. They are hardwired for survival. When they first detect your lure, whether by sight or by vibration, their initial reaction is often curiosity. What is that? Is it food? They will often move closer to investigate. This is that critical moment you see on your sonar when a mark rises up to meet your jig. Now the fish is close, it's observing, it's feeling those vibrations up close. If during this crucial inspection phase your lure continues its unnatural mechanical dance, the fish's brain will flip a switch. The initial curiosity is replaced by suspicion and then by a flight response. The unnatural movement is processed not as an opportunity but as a potential trap or a threat. The very action you are using to try and trigger a bite is what is actually triggering their instinct to flee. The fish that was slowly rising to your lure suddenly turns and disappears. So what is the solution? It's beautifully simple. The single most important part of your jigging retrieve is the pause. Let me say that again. The most critical element of your jigging is doing nothing at all. The pause is when everything happens. The pause is when a fish that has been following your lure gets its chance to inspect it without being intimidated. The pause is when your jig is at its most vulnerable, lying motionless or slowly settling on the bottom. This is the trigger. Most strikes will come during this pause or within the first second after the pause ends. Your frantic jigging gets their attention, drawing them in from a distance, but it's the sudden stop, the moment of stillness, that convinces them to eat. You have to become comfortable with the pause. Fight that urge to always be moving the rod tip. A 5, 10, even a 20-second pause can be absolutely deadly, especially in cold water or on heavily pressured lakes. The pause is your secret weapon. This leads us to the philosophy of less is more. Instead of big, aggressive rips and snaps, you need to learn the art of the subtle twitch. Once you've let your jig pause, the next movement shouldn't be another giant leap. It should be a tiny, subtle motion. Sometimes all it takes is a slight tightening of the line, just enough to make the jig shift its weight or rock slightly. Other times it's a short, sharp twitch of the rod tip, maybe only an inch or two, that makes the jig pop off the bottom just a little before settling again. Think about what that imitates. It's the flicker of a fin, the kick of a leg, the last weak, nerve-ending firing in a dying minnow. It's these small, subtle movements are far more realistic and far less intimidating than a huge, sweeping jig stroke. They keep the fish interested and guessing without scaring it off. Master the art of doing almost nothing, and you will be amazed at how many more fish you catch. Let's revisit the idea of the slack line because it's crucial to this natural presentation. The slack line secret is about giving your lure freedom. After you give the jig a lift or a twitch, you must immediately give slack back to the line. This is what allows the jig to fall naturally based on its own weight and shape. Some jigs are designed to spiral, some are designed to glide, some are designed to flutter. None of them can do what they are designed to do if you are holding them on a tight leash. The bite on a slack line is often not a big thump. You won't always feel it. Instead, you have to become a line watcher. Watch where your line enters the water. When the jig is falling, the line will be slowly sinking. If that line suddenly jumps, twitches, or stops sinking before it should have hit the bottom, a fish has eaten it. Set the hook. Learning to fish on a semi-slack line and watching that line for visual cues is one of the biggest steps you can take to becoming a truly elite jig fisherman. Another key is to constantly break your own rhythm. Remember how we said a predictable cadence is a dead giveaway? The solution is to be intentionally unpredictable. Never do the same thing twice in a row. Try this sequence: 2 sharp pops, then a 10-second pause, then just a slow 6-inch lift and a controlled fall, then let it sit for 15 seconds. Then 3 tiny, rapid-fire twitches right on the bottom. You are creating a story. You are making that lure seem like a living, breathing, and confused creature. The fish can't pattern you because you don't have a pattern. This element of surprise is a massive trigger. A fish that has been watching your lure, unsure of what to do, might be startled into striking when the lure suddenly does something completely different from what it did a moment before. Be erratic, be random, be anything but predictable. This all ties into the concept of matching the hatch, but with a twist. We often think of matching the hatch as using a lure that looks like the local forage. And that's important, but you also need to match the motion of the local forage. Pay attention to your environment. Are you fishing in very cold water where the fish and bait fish are lethargic? If so, your jigging should be incredibly slow, with very long pauses and minimal movement. A fast, aggressive jigging style would look completely out of place. Are you fishing in the summer when metabolisms are high and everything is active? Then you can incorporate more aggressive snaps and quicker movements, but still the pause is king. Are you imitating a crawfish? Then your movements should be focused on the bottom with drags, scoots, and hops. Are you imitating a suspended baitfish? Then your movements should be higher in the water column with more glides and flutters. Your technique should not be one size fits all. It should be adapted to what you are trying to imitate in that specific time and place. Here is a practical drill I want you to try on your next trip out. I call it the do nothing technique. It's a mental reset. Drop your jig to the bottom. Now, set your rod down. Don't touch it. For 1 full minute, do absolutely nothing. Just watch your line. This is going to feel incredibly weird and unproductive at first. Your brain will be screaming at you to pick up the rod and jig it. Resist that urge. After a minute, pick up the rod, give it one single slow lift, and set it back down for another minute. And this drill does 2 things. First, you will be shocked at how many fish you catch while doing literally nothing. It will prove to you the power of the pause. Second, it will help you break that mental addiction to constant motion. It will recalibrate your brain and teach you the patience required for a more natural, subtle presentation. It's a powerful lesson in how little you actually need to do to trigger a bite. Let's dig a little deeper into adjusting for water temperature because it's a huge factor. In cold water, say below 45 degrees Fahrenheit, a fish's metabolism slows down dramatically. They are not willing to chase a fast-moving meal. Energy conservation is their primary goal. Here, your presentation needs to be painfully slow. We're talking about pauses that can last up to 30 seconds or more. The movements between pauses should be minimal, a slow drag, a single twitch. In warm water, say above 65 degrees, fish are much more aggressive. Their metabolism is high and they are willing to chase. This is where you can use a faster cadence with more aggressive pops to trigger reaction strikes. But even here, the less is more principle applies. A quick series of snaps should still be followed by a pause to give the fish a chance to commit. Don't mistake a faster retrieve for a constantly moving retrieve. The rhythm changes with the season, but the principles of natural movement and the power of the pause remain the same. If you use electronics like a sonar or a flasher, you have a direct window into how the fish are reacting to your technique. This is invaluable information. Don't just jig blindly. Let the fish tell you what they want. Drop your jig down and watch the screen. When a fish appears, start with a very subtle presentation. Maybe just a slight shake. Does the fish rise to meet it, or does it stay put? Now try a more aggressive snap. Does the fish get spooked and swim away, or does it get excited and move in closer? This is a real-time conversation. If you pop the jig and the fish backs off, that's a clear signal that your movement was too aggressive. If you let it sit still and the fish comes right up and stares at it, that tells you the pause is what's intriguing it. Use your electronics not just to find fish, but to experiment with your jigging cadence and see, second by second, what is working and what is scaring them away. Ultimately, this all comes down to a mental shift. You have to move away from the mindset of an active angler who is making things happen and move towards the mindset of an observant angler who is presenting an opportunity. Your goal is not to force a bite through sheer action and aggression. Your goal is to present your lure in such a convincing, natural way that the fish decides to bite on its own terms. This requires patience. It requires confidence in your lure and in the power of doing less. It means you have to stop thinking about what feels right to you and start thinking about what looks and feels right to the fish. It's a transition from being a puppeteer, yanking on strings, to becoming a subtle actor, delivering a believable performance. When you make this mental shift, your entire approach to jig fishing will change, and your success rate will skyrocket. So let's put it all together. Imagine the story of one perfect drop. You send your jig down and let it hit the bottom with a little bit of slack in the line. You let it sit there, motionless, for a full 10 seconds. A nearby walleye feels the thud of it landing and moves over to investigate. You then give the rod tip 2 very short, sharp twitches, just enough to make the jig pop up and then settle back down. The walleye sees this flash and thinks it's a panicked minnow. Now, you enter the kill phase. You do nothing. You let the jig sit dead still on the bottom. The walleye is now hovering directly over it, staring it down. Its curiosity is piqued. It sees a vulnerable, easy meal just sitting there. After 15 seconds of this tense standoff, you slowly, ever so slowly, begin to lift your rod, dragging the jig across the bottom. That is the final trigger. The prey is trying to escape. The walleye's predatory instinct takes over, and it inhales the jig. You didn't force that bite. You convinced it to happen. So there you have it. The reason your jigging often seems to repel fish is because it's too mechanical, too predictable, and too aggressive. It violates the fundamental rules of the natural world. The biggest what a plot twist moment for most anglers is realizing that the pause, the moment of doing absolutely nothing, is far more powerful than any movement you can make with your rod. It's the silence between the notes that makes the music. This isn't just a small tip. This is a complete paradigm shift. It will change how you approach every single drop with a jig. You'll stop being a relentless machine and start being a thinking predator, using subtlety and patience as your greatest weapons. Thank you so much for watching and for being willing to challenge some old school thinking. If this gave you a new perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Now I have to ask, what's the one bad habit in your jigging that you're going to try and break on your next trip? Let's get a conversation going in the comments below.